Here's the honest truth about Denver real estate in 2025. Inventory in the Denver area keeps rising. Can we sustain this? And what are we actually looking at here? So we're going to talk about that today and what's going on in the Denver real estate market. We're also going to talk about all these crazy swings in the market that could affect both buyers and sellers. So let's start with one of our most surprising updates about Denver's real estate market that most people have missed entirely. So number one on our list is the massive inventory surge. So what exactly has happened with Denver's inventory levels? It's interesting. We've actually increased inventory 66.9% year over year. So we have 10,600 homes currently available on the market for sale. And what that means is we're edging towards a balanced market. Balanced market in our market is about 12,000 homes. So how does this compare historically? So inventory levels during the Great Recession went all the way up to 28,000 homes. And that was a bubble that was ready to burst back in 2006, 7, 8. And during that time, we felt like if you were a home that was backing to a busy road, for example, or not the most desirable floor plan, you were at the bottom of the totem pole and you took over 150 days in most cases to sell. So homes lasted a lot longer on the market. During the pandemic, we had only 2,000 units in the entire market. So that was like an inventory crisis, right? So we've seen the extremities on both sides, and that market produced multiple offers, humongous appreciation swings. And now we're in more of a balanced stage here. So 10,600 homes is not a time to press the panic button. However, we are edging towards 12,000 homes, which is what economists say is the balance line in the Denver market. So you may ask, what triggered this massive change? If you were to put it into one word, it would be affordability. It's the one thing that has really driven this uptick in inventory. So home builders are building more homes, and we still have a ton of people who want to buy homes. However, a lot of them can't buy homes because they can't afford home prices and payments in today's market. And so affordability is the one thing that's triggering this uptick in inventory and getting us closer to a balanced market. So you may be asking, how does this compare to national inventory trends? So in Colorado, we went up, like I said, 66.9% last year. In the US market, we went up 28.5% nationally. So therefore, we're seeing a little more uptick because of our average price point in Denver being over $780,000 compared to payments that are a little more affordable compared to job, incomes in other parts of the country. So you may ask, how quickly has this shift happened? Well, it's really taken place since the end of the pandemic, which was spring of 2022, is when we saw that inventory shortage start to disappear, right? And inventory climb. And so over the last 3 years, we've seen that uptick of inventory, but really it's gotten strongest and the steeper curve has happened over the last 12 months. And I believe the reason for that is you've had a lot of people just waiting to move, even though they've had needs. They haven't wanted to get away from those low interest rates. And now the needs are taking over. And now people are having to make those moves due to one life circumstance or another. So to put this into numbers for you, a year ago, we had 6,400 homes on the market compared to 10,600 homes today. So that's where your 66.9% increase has come from. And that gets us edging closer to that 12,000 home mark, right? Which is that balance line that economists say for the Denver real estate market. The Denver metro area is now sitting at approximately 1.8 months of inventory, meaning that it would take, if no more listings came on the market, it would take 1.8 months for all of that listed inventory to be gobbled up. And so economists look at this and say a balanced market would have between 4 and 6 months of inventory. And so we're getting closer to that mark, but we're still not quite there. So technically on paper, it's still a seller's market. However, because of affordability, it feels like more of a buyer's market. And I'll illustrate that a little bit more as we talk about what this means for buyers and sellers. So a couple more things to note. Inventory growth has been faster in condo and townhome segments. Central Denver and downtown areas have seen larger inventory increases. Douglas County and the southern suburbs have experienced more moderate inventory growth. So Denver's real estate market is experiencing a dramatic shift that many didn't see coming. The days of desperate buyers fighting over a handful of listings are behind us. So now that we understand the dramatic shift in Denver's inventory, let's talk about what this means if you're on the buying side of a transaction in 2025. So you might ask, has buyers' leverage changed? Well, yeah, I think it has. With more options available, supply and demand really controls this market. And so, if you're wondering what kind of negotiations are now possible for buyers, we're seeing a lot more 2-1 buy downs happening, which just means that buyers are able to buy down the rate temporarily up to 2% for the first year and 1% for the second year. And the cost on that is usually around 2% for the seller to pay that for the buyer. And so buyers are writing that into contracts and getting that in several cases. You may ask, how is inventory affecting the buying timeline? So in some cases, it's actually speeding it up because buyers see so many options that they can look at and they can really pin it down to, I just love these 3 homes. Like, they're perfect for me. They see one of the 3 and they're off to the races. In other cases, more selective buyers feel like they need to see and walk through every single one of those potential properties. And so it makes it so, the average buyer typically sees about 12 homes before making a decision. A couple other things to note, just as far as the temperature of the market right now on the buying side, there are 7% less multiple offer situations since 2022. And so since that peak of the market, we're seeing less competition and buyers are having a more comfortable buying process. Also, homes are now staying on the market on average of 48 days compared to 8 days during the peak frenzy. Price reductions are occurring on approximately 35% of listings. Buyers are successfully negotiating an average of 3 to 5% off of the price on asking prices for homes. Inspection contingencies are being accepted by sellers in over 90% of transactions. This was not true during the pandemic. People were waiving inspections left and right. Also, along those lines, appraisal gaps are now rare. So they're only occurring in less than 15% of transactions, where during the pandemic, we saw several homes, the majority had appraisal gaps, which means that the buyers were voluntarily offering to pay over appraised price for properties. That's not happening anymore. And then seller concessions, which means seller paid closing costs for buyers for repairs and just, in general in negotiations, have increased by 65% in this market. Currently, we have interest rates right around 6.5%. compared to 3% during the pandemic boom. So that's paid a big toll on affordability and therefore negotiation power for buyers. So you may ask, what are some of the hotter areas that have really seen good appreciation and growth during this time frame? And some of the more competitive areas are Northeast Denver, Green Valley Ranch, Montbello. They're showing some of the best value increases over the last 12 months. Also, the Central Park neighborhood, which is just east of Denver, has seen almost triple the inventory in certain price points. On another note, Castle Rock and Parker have now significantly more options in the $600,000 to $800,000 range. So if you're looking in Douglas County, you'll have a lot more options in that price point than you used to have. So single family homes are still appreciating 3 to 4% annually, where condos and townhomes are seeing a 7% decline year over year. So some of the pros, if you're a buyer, is there's way more options to choose from, and there's less pressure to make rush decisions. There's ability to include inspection and financing contingencies in your contracts and more negotiating power on price and repairs. Also, sellers are more willing to contribute towards your closing costs to help you out with that cash on hand at closing, and time to visit multiple properties before deciding on an option. No more making decisions in your car same day. The cons, if you're a buyer today, would be higher interest rates that offset a lot of the affordability gains. The best properties in top locations are still moving quickly, especially if they look good on the inside. Also, some of the price reductions are concentrated in some of the less desirable areas. Long-term appreciation likely slower than past years, and more inventory brings more decision fatigue. I know that affects some more than others. So if you're a buyer in Denver right now, I have good news for you. The power dynamic has shifted dramatically in your favor. For the first time in years, buyers have actual leverage at the negotiating table. Multiple offer situations have decreased by over 70% compared to the feeding frenzy we saw in 2022. Instead of having to make a decision within hours of the home hitting the market, buyers now have the time to actually consider their options. With homes staying on the market on average of 48 days, a far cry from the 8-day average we saw during the peak. While buyers are enjoying their newfound leverage, sellers are facing a very different reality. Let's look at what this inventory surge means if you're planning to sell your Denver home in 2025. Okay, so let's talk about what this means for sellers in this changing market. So the fact that average days have changed from 8 days to 48 days in a matter of 3 years definitely requires a lot more patience in getting your home sold. It also requires a lot more preparation. So never before has it been more important to prep your home properly and make sure that you're doing the things that actually matter, the things that buyers care about. And so I'm going to talk to you about a couple of those things that really matter in today's market, because you don't want to be one of those homes that's an overpriced listing that sits for 60 plus days with multiple price reductions, and then everybody's wondering what's wrong with that home. A lot of homeowners now are doing pre-inspections. That's increased 75% as sellers seek to avoid surprises during the contract process. Also, professional staging is a great move to prep your home properly, and we're showing that 15 to 20% faster sale times happen when homes are staged, and homes are getting 3 to 5% higher prices if they are staged. Also, professional photography is now essential. Homes with poor photos are seeing 40% fewer showings. That's a huge difference. And the first 10 days on market are still critical for generating maximum interest in your home. Condition matters significantly more. Dated homes are selling for 10 to 15% less than updated comparable properties. Price reductions typically happen after the 14 to 21 day mark without acceptable offers. And seller concessions are now averaging 1.5% of the purchase price. 43% of sellers are now doing some form of pre-listing improvements. So the most effective pre-sale improvements would include kitchen refreshes, like quartz counters are one of the best improvements you can make right now because of the wow factor that it makes for your kitchen and how well it contrasts, especially if you go from dark on dark on dark to now you've got maybe darker cabinets, but white quartz goes really well with that. Also, stainless steel appliances is another move that will double your money if you put those in. Other great improvements include bathroom vanity updates. Also, bathroom lighting is a great look with the nice glass cylinder lighting and Edison bulbs that can really create an eye-popping feel to the bathroom space. The best improvements still to this day are flooring and paint. We're seeing a ton of LVP flooring, the Luxe vinyl plank flooring, and new paint colors that are nice and light and bright. So nothing too dark or too taupe that'll get you in trouble. Today, we're just seeing nice light colors like alabaster and dub white that are just little off-whites to contrast the white trim. The luxury market, the million plus range, is seeing longer days on market, averaging between 45 and 60 days. Entry-level homes are still performing better, averaging 18 to 20 days on market. All right, so some of the pros to selling your home in today's market are, if you're well prepared and properly priced, you will sell relatively quickly. Also, with longer contract times, it actually makes it so it's a little easier to plan and prepare to make sure that your move goes smoothly. Most of the buyers out there in the market today are serious buyers that have needs rather than just speculative buyers who are looky-loos. There's fewer failed transactions also due to buyer's remorse, because most buyers that are out there are serious and they have a need for their move. Also, in today's market, there are more predictable closing timeframes, and it's still possible to sell for good prices with proper strategy. Some of the cons to selling in today's market are there's dramatically more competition from other listings. So there's a need for preparation and investment prior to listing your home. Also, there's longer carrying costs due to the marketing period and more negotiation pressures from buyers. In today's market, condition issues can no longer be overlooked. There's definitely a need to price strategically rather than aspirationally. For sellers in Denver, the 66% increase in inventory represents a fundamental shift that requires a complete rethinking of your selling strategy. The days of putting a home on the market with minimal preparation and watching multiple offers roll in within hours are largely behind us. The average days on market has increased from just 8 days during the peak frenzy to 48 days now. And that's just for homes that are selling. Poorly presented or overpriced properties are sitting for 60 plus days with multiple price reductions. With both buyers and sellers adjusting to the new realities, let's dive deeper into one of the most important metrics for understanding your local market conditions. So now let's talk about the future of the Denver real estate market. So are interest rates a key factor? Yes, they absolutely are. They've been teasing us, right? Just hovering down between 6 and 7% for a 30-year fixed mortgage. And that's absolutely impacting affordability and will continue to impact affordability. No runaway pricing is expected. And experts say that there should be steady growth of around 3 to 5% annually, a stark contrast to the double-digit spikes in recent years. The market is edging towards balance. So with 10,600 active listings, against a balanced benchmark of 12,000 listings, Denver is closer to equilibrium than it's been in years, and we'll probably see us touch that equilibrium at some point. Single-family homes remain a solid investment, showing consistent appreciation of 4 to 6% annually, making them a safer bet than a stagnant condo market right now. Condos and townhomes are lagging with flat or minimal growth, in many central areas due to oversupply and shifting buyer preferences towards space and privacy. Also, they've suffered from all of the storms. We had huge hail storm years in 2023 and 2024 that's greatly impacting insurance costs. Looking ahead to the rest of 2025, Denver's real estate market is all about balance and patience. Interest rates are inching down, hovering between 6 and 7%, but it's a slow tease, not a dramatic drop. Forget about runaway pricing. We're looking at a steady 3 to 5% growth, which is healthier in the long run. We're at 10,600 listings, just shy of the 12,000 listings mark that signals a balanced market. So expect deals to get fairer for everyone. One tip, stick with single family homes. They're still appreciating at a 4 to 6% increase per year, while condos are stuck in a bit of a decline across much of the city. With the future in mind, let's wrap up with some actionable steps for everyone navigating Denver's real estate scene right now. If you're ready to make a move in Denver's shifting 2025 market, whether buying with newfound options or selling with a standout strategy, I'm here to guide you through it. Buying or selling is complex, especially now, and I've helped countless clients navigate these exact changes. Drop me a call or text at the number on the screen and let's talk. Still curious about Denver real estate? Check out our next video where I rank Denver's best and worst suburbs. I'll see you there.